Hola, ¿cómo estás? Bienvenido. Mi nombre es Jordan, and yeah, welcome to Yo Spanish video. In this video, we're going to be going over why you're likely struggling to speak Spanish, and we're going to be going through the 10 reasons why this might be happening. The first reason why you're probably struggling in Spanish is because you're using language apps, all right? So Duolingo, Babbel, and just any other ones. There are so many on the App Store. Language apps, I'm not saying they're totally useless. Of course, you're going to learn something, but for what you want to learn, for where you want to go, that's not going to be the vehicle that's going to take you there. You want to become conversational in Spanish. Language apps are not going to help you with that at all. Now, I'm going to tell you why language apps are no good. So, language apps, especially something like Duolingo, it just focuses on the game aspect, okay? Trying to keep you coming back. You start trying to, my streak, I don't want to lose my streak. I've heard so many people say, I don't want to lose my streak. They're playing, manipulating. They do it very well. They're manipulating your brain because you start off saying, I want to get really, really good at Spanish. I want to learn Spanish. I want to be able to communicate with Spanish speaking people, to the point where after 100 days, I got a 100-day streak, I don't want to lose my streak. And you're doing whatever they're telling you to do just so you keep your streak. But you're actually more focused about keeping your progress of the streak rather than and not losing that, rather than actually, hang on a minute, in a conversation, how good am I at speaking? Am I speaking very well? Is my level quite good in conversation, or maybe in conversation I'm kind of struggling a little bit? That's how you truly judge whether you're doing well or not your streak. Okay, so it's just manipulating your emotions and just trying to emotionally keep you in an emotional prison so that you can't escape. And I've even spoken to people who know that they're not actually doing well with some of these language apps. They know that it's not actually serving them, yet they don't want to lose that streak. And it's like, you actually know that you're not really getting any better at Spanish, because when you speak with people in public, it's not you're not anywhere better than you were 2 months ago, 3 months ago, but you just don't want to give it up because you don't want to give up that streak. And it's like, wow. Then that kind of becomes like a mental problem, and it is a whole different ball game now. We're not even talking about Spanish anymore. So language apps, if I go further in detail, language apps don't prepare you for conversation, because a language app is not going to help you practice speaking with people in person. And that is the number one reason why, you know one of the biggest reasons why people don't get to where they want to get to in with Spanish in any language is because they're not practicing enough. Okay, the language app, you're sitting at home in your living room and you're just pressing the buttons like, yeah. Oh, ding ding. Oh, great, brilliant. All these green ticks pop up everywhere. Like, you think you're doing great, but that's not how you learn to speak a language. That's nothing, not even remotely close to how you learn to speak English as a kid, as a child. All right, you don't sit on the app trying to learn English. You're speaking with people. You're experiencing it. You're within. It's around you. Okay, you're hearing it. You're seeing it. You're speaking it. But not just pressing buttons on an app. That is not going to help. Okay, and furthermore, it's just not detailed enough. Language apps are not detailed enough. They kind of just scratch the surface for you. Okay, they're not really showing you how to create your own sentences. They're not really giving you any fundamental knowledge and any structure. It's just, you know, it's kind of like a little game. You match the pictures to the words, and it's too soft. You need something that's going to be a bit more juicy, that you can really get your head around, that gives you the foundations to start building and actually getting better and better and better at Spanish. Language apps just don't do that. The second reason why you're probably struggling in Spanish, and you're struggling to get to where you want to get to in Spanish, is because I touched on it previously before. It's because you're not practicing enough. Okay, I cannot emphasize how much, how important it is to practice when it comes to speaking Spanish. Okay, when you're on your journey to become conversational, if you're not practicing, you simply will not improve. You may improve a tiny bit like this, but if you're practicing, you're going to be improving like this, and it starts to snowball and it starts to compound. All right, just like anything in life. So let's give you an example, because maybe you not understanding what I'm fully saying here. So when I say practice, I don't mean language apps, pressing buttons. I don't mean watching Netflix. I don't mean listening to reggaeton and salsa. I don't mean reading articles and newspaper pages in publications in Spanish. I don't even mean texting in Spanish, okay? When it comes to practicing Spanish, what do you want to do when it comes to speaking Spanish? You say, I want to speak Spanish. So to speak Spanish, you need to be able to obviously speak it, and you need to be able to listen and hear it. Reading and writing is secondary. That comes after you've done the speaking and the listening. So what do you need to be doing if it comes to if we're talking about practicing? The only practicing that exists when it comes to learning a language, learning Spanish, speaking to somebody face to face, live in person, in real life, speaking to somebody on FaceTime, or speaking to somebody on the telephone, mobile phone, cell phone, wherever you're from in the world. Okay, those three things. So face to face in person is obviously the best one. All right. Secondary is FaceTime, Zoom, WhatsApp, FaceTime, whatever. Third one is just a blind phone call. All right. And of course, the best one is face to face. The not so best one is on the phone. But they're all good, okay, because you're live and you're speaking back and forwards. FaceTime and face to face, you get to be able to see the lips, and it's a bit easier than just on the phone because you can't read the lips. But practicing speaking Spanish, you cannot get enough of it. Some people say, how much should I be practicing a day? Well, I would tell you what the minimum is. The minimum, around about 15, 20 minutes speaking a day to somebody. That I would say is the minimum if you're really serious about getting better at Spanish. But really and truly, the question shouldn't be how much should I be doing every day? It's how can I do as much as I can within 24 hours every day? That should be the question. How can I find time to practice as much as I can? Because when you ask that question, now you're in a better frame of mind. Now you're in an offense mode, attacking rather than in defense mode, playing it like conservatively. All right, you always want to be thinking, how can I do more? Okay, because the more you do, the better you'll get. Now, let me give you an example. So let's say if I asked you, okay, you want to learn to drive a car. So do you believe that you can drive a car with just reading books about learning to drive and how to drive and watching videos about how to drive? Do you honestly believe that you will be able to drive a car just from reading the books and watching the videos on how to drive? Any person I ask that in the world will tell me no. Because why? Because you're not practicing. Yes, you're getting all of the theory. That's great. You go through the FlowChatMethod course here at Your Spanish. That's great. Okay? But you need to implement everything that you're learning from one of your Spanish coaches or me one-to-one, or on what you're learning on the role play that we do every Wednesday. You need to take the knowledge that you're getting from that and implement it in real life. Otherwise, you will just be plateauing, okay? You really need to practice. So when it comes to driving a car, you must practice driving the car. You must get in the car and put the seatbelt on and know how it feels, because on paper, yeah, you might know everything that you need to say to be able to approach that girl and get her number and make her really like you, whatever, because you've seen all the videos on YouTube and read all the books, but you've not actually gone out there and spoken to anybody and know how it feels to get sweaty palms on your hands, and you start jittering, and your mind's racing at 100 miles an hour and your heart's like beating out of your chest. You don't know how that feels. And it's the same with Spanish. When it comes to speaking with people, sometimes you're speaking with strangers, sometimes you're speaking with your wife or your husband or your partner's family or your own family members, and it's a bit nerve-wracking, okay? And it can be very nerve-wracking, and you don't know what to say, or you know something in your brain that you've learned before, but like he opens his mouth, but the words won't come out. He's choking now, like 8 Mile on Eminem, right? And so it's like, you know what to say, but because you got stage fright, performance anxiety, it's the same in anything, in basketball, in football, in performing arts, it's all the same. And the more you perform and the more you're practicing live, the better chance you have of actually nailing it when it comes to it. Okay, you might rehearse your lines with your mum and dad at home in the kitchen, but when it comes to the play, when it comes to doing the actual play, maybe those words don't come so quickly to your head because you've got the performance anxiety. All right, so you've got to practice as much as possible, and this is the number one reason why people fail. Okay, I've seen it so many times. I've come across so many people that want to learn Spanish here in Colombia or wherever I am. Practice. People are just not practicing enough. They're learning Spanish, but they're not speaking with anybody. They don't speak Spanish every day. You have to practice. And if you don't have anybody to practice with, go out and find some people. If you're living in New York or Miami, Houston, Los Angeles, great. There's so many Latin American people there. If you're living in London, where I live, there's places in London where there's just exclusive communities of Latin American people. You can find people on the internet. go to some salsa classes, some salsa events. You can find these people, and if you really, really can't, we've solved that problem here with our role play that we do every single Wednesday, where you can practice speaking Spanish live with one of our Yo Spanish coaches who speaks fluent English and is a native Spanish speaker. And you can really practice with other people that are also learning, like-minded, non-judgmental zone, judgment-free zone, and everybody's on the same goal. And you can practice at least once a week, every single week for an hour. It's great, all right? But if you really want to, up it, I would suggest finding people that you can really speak Spanish with. People that are Spanish speakers, wherever they are, whoever it might be, somebody, you're the cleaner at your work, or it might be your next door neighbor, or it might be, go to a restaurant, or maybe your boss, or whoever it may be. Okay, so really, really practice speaking Spanish as much as you can every day. There's never too much to do. Okay, but remember, face to face, on the phone, or FaceTime. Everything else doesn't count. Kind of helps a little bit, but it's not as good. It's not anywhere near as good as face to face, FaceTime, or on the phone. Vamos pues. Third reason why you're likely struggling with Spanish is because you're focusing way too much on grammar, technical stuff, and even pronunciation. Okay, so focusing on grammar is important, but it all comes at a certain stage. Okay, what you don't want to be doing is trying to slam dunk before you can even catch the ball. All right, you need to go at a certain pace. Right, you learn how to pass, learn how to catch, learn how to dribble. Then maybe we can talk about slam dunking. You don't even know how to shoot yet. All right, so grammar sure is important when you need it, but that's way down the line. In the beginning, you shouldn't be touching anything to do with grammar. You shouldn't be looking at anything technical. You shouldn't even be over focusing on pronunciation. Okay, pronunciation is important, of course, because if you don't pronounce things right, people are not going to understand you, of course. All right, but only really the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. All right, every single word in Spanish and English has a vowel. All right, so if you know how to pronounce the vowels A, E, I, O, U in Spanish, then you're halfway there with every single word you're going to come across. All right, and we have videos for that inside of the FlowChatMethod course. So yes, all right, but if you're just exclusively focusing on pronunciation, you don't even know the words, what they mean yet. You don't even know how to create your own sentence yet. All right, so start small. Pronunciation comes as you learn more Spanish. Pronunciation in Spanish is very consistent. So the way you see it is the way it sounds. All right, so you'll see a word with DAD at the end, oportunidad, seguridad, mensualidad, or whatever. All right, whatever word it may be that ends in DAD is going to be pronounced the same because the pronunciation in Spanish is very consistent. However, in English, it's not like that. So EAR is an ear, but BEER is beer, but it's spelled differently but pronounced the same. But then you got BEAR, which is bear, but then you got TEAR, which is tear. So it's not consistent in English. So it's more important in English, but not as important in Spanish, because in Spanish you have the pronunciation is super consistent. All right. So once you know how to say one sound, you can say the other. But going back to the grammar, now you shouldn't be focusing on grammar in the beginning, because just like anything you learn, I learned to play the piano, and I still don't really know how to read music, but I play amazingly well. People, tell me all the time, and it's because I didn't focus on reading music, because that's not what I wanted to do. That would have slowed me right down. Okay, that would have slowed me it would have taken me 3 times as much time that I did to learn the piano to learn it. Okay, because I've been slowing myself down, learning something that I didn't want to learn. Okay, it's boring. Grammar, let's be real, it's not the funniest thing in the world. And if you're doing it at the beginning, it's boring. It's going to demotivate you. You're going to be thinking to yourself, this is not working, because you still can't speak Spanish after 5 or 10 hours of studying Spanish on your own, or with a tutor, or whatever. You're still going to think to yourself, damn, I've done 10 hours. I spent this money on 10 hours. I've been doing this for 10 hours. I've done my own homework outside of it, and I still can't speak Spanish to that person at the train station that I see every morning, or I still can't speak Spanish and order my food in the Colombian restaurant or the taco spot. I still can't speak to the server. I still can't speak Spanish at the Bad Bunny concert. I can go on, right? You're gonna be demotivated. You're gonna feel, damn, I've just been wasting my time. I've been wasting my money. This is not working. So why would I continue? Like F this. That's probably what you're thinking. Okay, so it's gonna demotivate you. It's going to deter you from wanting to continue. You're going to feel like a failure. You're going to feel like you can't do this. It's just a downward spiral, all right? when really it's not your fault. It's totally not your fault. It's just that most institutions, schools, whatever, places where you learn Spanish are gonna be just shoving everything down your throat way too fast, way too hard, and from the very get go. And that's not the way to do it. Here at Yo Spanish, what we do is we try to give you the most relevant things, but in the smallest amount as possible. So we try to give you as little as possible. That's going to give you the biggest benefit. So you can take a small chunk of information and actually get this much value out of it. And it's not hard to remember. It's not hard to do. It's not demotivating you, and you're seeing the results early on. After the first hour with me or one of our coaches, you're gonna walk away with considerably more Spanish than what you knew before you came. Okay, every single time that we do a session, it's like that, and we're not ramming things down your throat. The 10th session is going to be considerably harder than the first one for sure. But by the time you get to the 10th one, your Spanish is going to be already up here anyway, and you're going to know a lot, and you're going to be super motivated, and you're going to everything is working. So it's like, yeah, you're tackling anything that comes with you with like with eagerness. All right. But if you just start with grammar at the beginning, again, it's just a recipe for disaster. It's too much too soon. All right. You should not be touching conjugations and grammar and all of that technical stuff right at the beginning. You should be focusing on speaking. Okay, focusing on constructing your own sentences, focusing on, can I present myself in Spanish as much as possible without those conjugations and the grammar stuff, which comes eventually once you get to a better level in Spanish. The fourth reason why you're probably struggling with Spanish is because you're not immersing yourself in the culture. You're not exercising immersion. You need to be submerged within Spanish. Now, I've spoken about practice. Practicing is very important. And I told you that listening to music, watching Netflix, reading books and articles is not practice. It will help, but it's not practice, which is key. Okay, practice is coming like king. But you do need to be immersed within the Spanish-speaking culture. Okay, well, the Spanish-speaking world. Spanish-speaking culture varies with different countries, different zones, different regions. But you need to be amongst Spanish speakers. For example, if you were trying to lose weight, but all of your friends are obese, that's going to be pretty hard because everything that you're seeing is the opposite to what you want to be doing. You're trying to quit smoking, but all of your friends are chain smokers and they're offering you cigarettes every day, all day, every day. How much? That's going to be so difficult to stop smoking because everything around you is smoking and you're trying to get away from that, but everything that you see is smoking. And it's the same with Spanish. If you're trying to learn Spanish, I'm not even saying, oh, you're just surrounded by Portuguese people. At least your mind would be, thinking about a secondary language. But I mean, you're trying to learn Spanish, but you're just around pure English speakers. You're watching English movies. You're listening to English music. All of your friends are speaking English to you. I'm not saying get new friends. That's definitely not what I'm saying. Sorry, I'm not saying change your friends that you already have. I'm saying maybe you can start hanging out with some new friends that do speak Spanish. Maybe you can start going to some, hanging out in a Spanish-speaking neighborhood if you have one near you. Maybe you can, find some friends online and just, watch some podcasts in Spanish, or instead of going to that barber shop, maybe go to the Dominican barber if you have a Dominican barber shop near you, or the hair salon. Or instead of going to get your fish and chips or your mac and cheese from the American diner or from the chip shop, if you're from the UK, maybe try go to the Mexican restaurant, get yourself some enchiladas, or go to the Colombian restaurant and get yourself some sancocho de res or pan de bono or empanadas. Okay, like try to get around Spanish speakers more because it's really going to help you. And like I always like to say, your brain should be in Spanish mode. You walk around the house and you stub your toe on one of those plugs, and you usually be like, oh, F and L or whatever. You want to be saying that in Spanish because it's just the first thing that comes to your head is the Spanish rather than the English. Okay, that's when you know that you're in Spanish mode. And you can only do that when you surround yourself with Spanish. Put your phone in Spanish. That's a great one, okay? Changing your phone in Spanish or changing a couple of apps into Spanish and keeping your phone in English. Whatever, okay? You really want to be around Spanish as much as you can, okay? So listening to music, you can listen to, not Bad Bunny, not reggaeton, okay? That will help to a certain extent, but if you want to help yourself the most, I would suggest listening to some slower salsa, some older salsa that's quite slow. Listening to bachata. Bachata is great. It's very slow. not very slow, but it's slower than reggaeton. They usually don't use slang or cursing words that you don't really want to be learning. They speak a bit slower, clearer, better pronunciation, and there are not as many loud instruments so that you can actually hear the voice clearer on top of the track. So a couple of off the top of my head, a couple of good great bachata singers are Romeo Santos from the USA. He's Dominican, born and raised in New York, or Prince Royce. Okay, so Romeo Santos and Prince Royce. But just check out bachata genre in general. Okay, and on Netflix, again, go on Netflix, type in Spanish language films or Spanish language TV shows. All right, on the search box where you can type in Spanish language. You're going to be shown a bunch of Spanish Netflix shows, or Mexican Netflix shows, or Colombian Netflix shows. Those are the three main Spanish-speaking Netflix countries, shall we say. But you do have some Peruvian ones, some Argentinian ones, and from other parts of the world. But generally speaking, they're usually Spanish, Mexican, or Colombian. All right, and that's what you want to be doing. Getting yourself around Spanish speakers as much as you can, because the more that you are around it, the more likely you are to be speaking it. If you're always around Spanish speaking people, you're going to eventually start speaking Spanish. So that's you're practicing, you're getting your practicing in. But then also you will be just thinking more in Spanish. You will see words. Sometimes when you want to say a word, you would have seen it in a book, or you would have seen it on the subtitles on Netflix, or you would have heard it on the song. Okay, so Netflix subtitles in English and original Spanish audio. Immersion. Make sure you are surrounded by Spanish, because it is very, very important. Number 5, you are too afraid of making mistakes. Now, this one is a big one, okay? This one is a huge one. Even here in Colombia, language exchanges that I go to, I hear people that are trying to learn English, they're afraid to talk to me, and I'm like, I'm the last person that's going to judge you. I'm a native English speaker and you're trying to learn English. I think it's great that you're trying to speak English and you're trying to learn English. Like I'm like, I feel proud almost, and I don't even know you. Okay, it's refreshing, and seeing somebody trying to do something new that they don't have to do. It's like, wow, it's actually inspiring. And if I didn't speak another language, it would inspire me to try to learn to speak another language. So let's swap it over into Spanish now. You are a native English speaker trying to learn Spanish, trying to get conversational and fluent in Spanish. Now, a Spanish speaker that you're speaking to may be learning another language. A lot of people, at least in Colombia, are trying to learn another language, mainly English, sometimes French, sometimes Korean. So whether they are or aren't trying to learn another language, they're still going to be flattered and pleased and inspired and like maybe a bit pleasantly surprised that you're trying to speak their language. And again, they're not a Spanish speaker who's native is not going to mock you and make fun of you, because why are you afraid to speak Spanish? Let's start there. You're probably afraid to speak Spanish because obviously it's not your native tongue, and you might think you sound funny. You might be afraid of saying something that sounds weird. Maybe you're afraid of saying something that might offend somebody, but not really. It's usually because there might be some awkward silence that you don't understand what they're saying, or they don't understand what you're saying, and maybe the conversation doesn't flow like you want it to flow. These are all normal things to think and feel, but let's just think about it logically, because when you think about it logically, it actually helps you to eradicate and eliminate and remove the fear that you have when it comes to speaking Spanish. Now, okay, you might think that somebody might laugh at your Spanish because you sound a bit funny. Okay, so let's start there. So if somebody decides to laugh at your Spanish, who's going to be laughing at your Spanish? Because a Spanish speaker, a native Spanish speaker, is not going to laugh at your Spanish because they just will not do that. The only person that's going to do that, logically speaking, is somebody who probably speaks both. All right. Now, if somebody does laugh at your Spanish, all right, let's say they don't speak English. All right, you're an English speaker, and somebody's making fun of you because you sound a bit funny. Now, I have used this before when I was learning Spanish, and it's logically speaking, it's perfect. So you're speaking Spanish, you're speaking their language, they only speak Spanish. You speak English, but you're trying to communicate in Spanish. Now, if they want to laugh and mock you because you said something funny, and you say, okay, cool, entonces podemos hablar en inglés. Yo hablo inglés, perfecto. Perfectamente. Mi inglés es perfecto, yo hablo perfectamente. Entonces, ¿tú quieres hablar en inglés? Porque podemos. Like, do you want to speak in English? Because I speak perfect English. Like, it's mi primer idioma. Yo hablo bien, 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 bien. I speak really, really well. Like, perfectly. Do you want to speak in English? And they'd be like, pues no, es que yo no hablo inglés. It's like, I don't speak English. Like, okay, cool. So then we'll just continue speaking in Spanish because you only speak Spanish and I'm trying to practice my secondary language. How about that? And then you'll see them, they'll just close their mouth and the penny will drop and they'll be like, okay, yeah, he or she is actually like ahead of me in that game, shall we say. So let me, cut them some slack. So you can say that. And if somebody does speak two languages, it's probably because they grew up speaking Spanish in the house and they were born and raised in the USA or Canada, for example. So they grew up speaking English in like school and with their friends, but then in the house with their mom and dad and like family, they were speaking Spanish. So they know both. So maybe they want to like mock you because, oh, you said it wrong, ha 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 ha. Okay, cool, but like that's like, two people becoming rich, but one person was just born rich and the other person was born in a war-torn society and was like on the verge of, death, and they made it out and they made like some crazy business and whatnot, and now they're also rich like the other person who was just born into money. The person who was just born into money cannot mock the person who came from the gutter, because he or she has they've worked themselves up. Okay, so it's like you just had the silver spoon in your mouth or somebody that's worked for it. We're not the same. Okay, and I had this conversation with somebody recently who's saying, oh, it's not that hard. There was a guy in a language exchange who's from the USA, and he said, oh, it's really hard. Spanish is so hard for me. Da, da, da. Obviously, he doesn't know about your Spanish, but I feel his pain, because it's something completely new. And he fully entitled to say that Spanish was hard for him. And this woman said, no, it's not that hard. It's not hard. I said, whoa, hang on a minute. I know you speak English very, very well, and you also speak Spanish, but you're Colombian, okay? And I asked her, where you from? Where did you born? When did you go to? She was born in Colombia. She moved to the USA when she was in her teens, okay? Her early teens, all right? So I think she was like, not even teens, I think she was like 11 or 12. But it was like the start of secondary school. And I said, okay, although you didn't go when you were really, really young, and you still had to, adapt because you already were speaking Spanish, etc. You went when you were very, very young, all right? We're talking like 11 years old, like at the start of secondary school or high school, as you call it, right? So at that age, you're still learning new things. So, it's going to come way easier for you at that age than it would for him in his 30s, okay? And then she was like, okay, yeah, I see what you mean. So I pulled her up on that, and she was, she understood what I was saying. She actually agreed with me. So her experience and somebody who's learning it as an adult is completely different. Okay, growing up speaking it, just picking up as a child is different to, okay, I'm a fully grown adult and I want to learn this now. All right. So don't ever be discouraged by somebody who tries to mock your Spanish, because at the end of the day, most people actually will not mock your Spanish. All right. I've been speaking Spanish for a good few years now, and when I was learning, I was learning for almost it took me almost 2 years, or like 18 months. All right. For that whole journey, I rarely got anybody trying to mock my Spanish. Definitely not from any native Spanish speakers. More likely from somebody who, like I said, grew up speaking both languages. But even then, they might sound a little bit different to a native speaker because they didn't grow up in the country speaking it, and they grew up speaking it somewhere else. So again, don't be discouraged. There's no reason to feel afraid. Most people that are listening to you and hearing you speak Spanish, most Spanish speakers that you're going to be speaking to are going to be proud to hear you speak in Spanish. They're going to be inspired. They're going to be amazed and pleased and like pleasantly surprised that you're trying to learn their language. And it's not an easy thing to do. You don't have to do it. So people will respect you a lot. You'll gain more respect trying to speak a secondary language. All right. Don't need to be afraid. Of course, you're not going to sound how you sound in English because it's not your first language. Like, of course, that makes perfect sense. All right. So you shouldn't be concerned by that, because that's just a completely normal thing. All right. But again, most of the time, it's all in your head. Nobody's making fun of your Spanish. Nobody thinks you sound funny. People accept that this is not your language, so you're going to have an accent. You're going to have pauses and stuff. It's perfectly normal. And it's the same for the Spanish speaker when they speak English, so they know how it feels. Okay, they can resonate with you. It's the same thing. All right. So once again, do not need to be afraid to speak Spanish. Number 6, you don't know where to start. Now this is a big one too, all right? Because if you don't know where to start, you're not gonna finish, all right? So not knowing where to start, this is something that we help you with here at Your Spanish. We give you like, a game plan. We give you a system to follow, all right? But like not knowing where to start, you may start on a language app. And I know people that have been on them for like 2 years, and still struggling to present themselves in Spanish. I'm like, what have you been doing for 2 years? Like, you should be fluent by now. 2 years, that's a long time. Either you're not putting in the work or you're just going about it completely the wrong way, okay? So not knowing where to start is a big one. And if you start in the wrong place, you start going down the wrong path, just continuously going left when you should be going right or straight, and you're just wasting your time, wasting your money, wasting your energy, just frustrating yourself, and then you may arrive at the point of where you feel like giving up, all right, and you feel like, oh, this is not for me, I can't do this, and you start saying all of these negative beliefs, and you start believing them, okay, because you've just been led down the wrong path. And that doesn't come from you not being good at learning Spanish and being good at speaking Spanish and communicating it. That comes from you not knowing what to do, all right? And if you start in the wrong place, you're always going to finish in the wrong place, all right? Or you may not even get to the finish line, all right? So it's very important that you start in the correct place. And that's what we help you do here at Your Spanish, all right? We start you where you need to start. So some of my students that come to us, some of my personal one-to-one students, we have started them at I've started them at 0, because they're literally at 0, which is perfectly fine. Or some are very, very advanced, and we'll start them further along the FlowChat method, because they don't need to present themselves in Spanish, because they know how to do that already. So now they just need to understand more about how to create their own sentences, how to understand where the components of a sentence, how to understanding more about the different types of words that you come across in Spanish, being able to put them together, etc. So I start them there. Some people, I start them maybe on step 2. So it all depends where you are. It doesn't matter where you are. If you're advanced, not advanced, beginner, complete beginner, 0, it's perfectly fine. I know exactly where to start you. So do our Yo Spanish coaches. So does the FlowChat method. Maybe you go into the FlowChat method video course and you say, oh, hang on a minute, I already know all this in step 1. I'll just go to step 2. That's perfectly fine too. Okay, I'd recommend going through all of it if you can, but that's perfectly fine too. If this is where you think you should start because this is what you know so far, great. Okay, so again, here at the FlowChat method, here at Your Spanish, with our FlowChat method, we help you start where you should start, and wherever you start, you're gonna end up going on a path that is perfect for you, and that's gonna take you to where you want to get to. All right. So again, it's very important that you know exactly where to start. Number 7 leads on from number 6, and number 7 is you do not have a structured plan. Now I ask people like, so do you speak Spanish, or how's your Spanish journey going? Yeah, it's going good. Yeah, it's going all right. Yeah. I'm pretty good on it. Yeah. Really? Okay. And then you start to ask a few more questions. You're like, hang on a minute. I think you're actually making it out to be better than what it is. All right. And I even came across somebody recently actually who knew that the language apps was not actually helping them. And I said, well, you say it's going well, but then you also say it's not helping you. So what's your plan? Like, how do you plan on getting to a conversational level? Couldn't tell me. Like, and it's important in anything. If you don't have a plan, like, where are you really going with this? It's quite cliche. It's quite logical. It's quite common sense. But at the end of the day, it's blatantly obvious. If you don't have a plan, how are you going to achieve what you want to achieve? You just hope. You might get lucky. So again, it's very important to have a plan. Are you starting with the hardest thing first and then getting to the easiest thing last? Like, that's not a good plan. All right. So again, a reason why a lot of people are struggling to get to the level of Spanish that they want to get to is because they don't have a plan. And this is a big one. Part of the plan will be included with practicing. The plan will be including finding some friends so you can immerse yourself in the culture a bit more or whatnot. A plan is everything. Knowing where to start, which we covered in number 6. All right. A plan is knowing, okay, I shouldn't be using these language apps, and I should be using the Yo Spanish and the FlowChat method. Like, that's a plan. All right. And again, here at Your Spanish, we have the FlowChat method, which is my trials and errors, my trials and tribulations over the 18 months, my wins, my losses, the everything that I went through, all right, my whole experiences, and I took that 18 months and I packaged it into a easy step-by-step system that you can follow that will take you from here to here, okay? When you want to learn to drive a car, you want to go to have driving lessons, you're not just like, oh, I just want to have a few lessons, see how it goes. No. You say, okay, this guy, this woman is going to take me from not knowing how to drive to knowing how to drive, which means I passed my test and now I'm on the road and I'm scurrying around town in a drop top. Okay, you want to take that person to, you want that person to take you to the promised land. You're not just like, oh, I'll go here and see what that's like. Oh, I'll go and try that little bit. Oh, I'll try that. It's not a little tasting buffet. No, you want one main course that's going to take you from okay, I'm hungry and now I'm full. Like, that's what you want. You don't want a little tasting. Oh, I'll try this, I'll try that. Oh, I'll try this one. No, that's not what it is. Okay, so we give you a structured plan that you can follow. It's very easy to follow. Whether you want a one-to-one coach with me or a one-to-one Your Spanish coach to do that whole process with you, or you want to do it on your own through the video course and do that by yourself, that's totally fine as well. Okay, so again, the FlowChat method, Your Spanish, we give you a structured plan to follow that is going to take you from 0 or wherever you are to conversational and beyond. Okay, 0 to conversational in 3 months and beyond. Okay, so again, very, very important that you have a plan. You know where you're starting from, you know where you're going, you know what you're doing, and you know what your outcome is going to be. Number 8, you don't know what to learn. Okay, now this links kind of into the last 2 points we made in 6 and 7. Now, it's very important that you know what to learn, because some people may think, okay, yeah, well, I'm learning Spanish, so it's good. No, not necessarily. Yes, you're learning Spanish and your goal is to learn Spanish. So anything that is a Spanish word, phrase, sentence, whatever, verb, like in Spanish, technically, yeah, you're on the right path. But no, that's not true, because you may be learning irrelevant stuff that's not relevant for you. Maybe you're a chef, but you're learning stuff about like the solar system and planets and Jupiter and galaxy and stuff and spaceships and rockets and hydrochloric acid. Like, that's not what you need. You need to know what the name for a saucepan is. You need to know how to say the verb to cook, to eat. Like, those are the things that you should be learning because of what you do. You are a chef. Okay, so that's most of the time. Most of the times you're going to be talking about that stuff, maybe to other chefs, maybe introducing yourself in Spanish, saying that you are a chef. You don't even know what the word for a chef is. So yeah, you can learn all this other stuff, but it's not actually relevant for you, and you're probably not going to say it. You're probably not going to say it as much as you think you would be saying it, because this other stuff that you're learning never comes up in Spanish. So then you're spending time to learn something that you're not actually going to use 99% of the time in Spanish. So are you doing yourself a service or you're doing yourself a disservice? Okay, so it's important to know what to learn. All right, and again, maybe you're learning grammar. Again, going back to, we've touched on this before, like technical stuff. That's not what you should be learning. You're starting with the hardest stuff first and you're going with the easiest stuff last, and it's just not structured. It's not the right plan, and it's not what you should be doing. Okay, yes, it's Spanish, but you need to be pinpointing and targeting the specific Spanish that you need for you personally, for what you do and who you are as a person and your interests, and also for you and your level and where you are with the Spanish. You shouldn't be learning about the subjunctive imperfect mood when you don't even know how to say hola, ¿cómo estás? How are you? Hello. Okay? So again, it's very important to know that you're making sure that you're learning relevant Spanish for you and your interests and who you are as a person, and also for you and your level in Spanish. And you're not starting with something up here when you're down here. Number 9. So the 9th reason why you're probably struggling with Spanish is because you're learning things that you're never going to use that are irrelevant to you. Okay? We've touched on this in number 8. All right? The things that you say in English every day is what you will say in Spanish most of the time, okay? Pretty much over 90% of the time. You're not gonna go from saying, oh, my name's Jeff and I like to play video games and I like to play football, to like in Spanish, and you say, oh, my name's Steven and I like fishing and I like I like to skydive or whatever. Like, you're going to say the same things, all right? Okay? Oh, my name's Steven. I'm a ballerina and I like to paint flowers. No, you're gonna be saying the same things that you say in English in Spanish. All right, you are the same person you are in English as you are in Spanish. That's the goal, to be able to convey who you are in Spanish the same way that you can do in English. Okay, so you don't feel like you're two different people. All right, you don't feel like you're like cosplaying when you're in Spanish because you don't know enough words to say, etc. All right, so it's important that you're learning relevant stuff for you. You don't want to be going off topic and talking about different things. You don't want to be saying random stuff. You don't want to be, trying to. You don't want to be told what you should be saying and what you should learn in Spanish, just as a blanket kind of one size fits all. That's what some Spanish institutions, schools, programs they do. They will tell you you should learn this. You need to. Well, no, because that's not what you say in English. Think about the conversations that you have in English. All right, try to maybe even write down. This is a good activity as well. You can write down all of the things like you say in English. Some of the, when you're out and talking with your friends or you go to the shop or whatever, things that you're doing in English, you can write those down. And then, are you learning those things in Spanish? The sentence that you made, the words, the vocabulary in the sentence. Are you learning random words like the pigeon? La paloma. Like, are you learning random words for just random things like the seed or like? But you don't say those words on a day-to-day basis in English. Maybe you like fashion and you say the word sneakers or trainers wherever you're from, tennis shoes, a lot every day. Maybe you're talking about houses and interior design because that's what you really like, or maybe you're talking about food a lot most days because you're always hungry, or you're a chef or you like to cook, or that's like your hobbies. So you want to be focusing and looking at hang on a minute, what do I usually talk about the most in English? What are the sort of things that I say when I'm speaking with other people? All right, and start looking there, and those vocabulary, those words, that vocab is relevant for you. Not just blanket vocab that you think that you should learn because this school program app told you to. No, start using a bit more common sense and thinking, okay, how can I say what I say in English and say that into Spanish? Okay, and say it in Spanish. You want to make sure that what you're learning is relevant. Otherwise, what you will find is this: you can spend one whole month learning so much Spanish. And I've seen people like this in English trying to learn English here in Colombia, and that they've got books, pages and pages, like all of the numbers from 1 to 100, like handwritten out, like uno, two, dos, like all like written out to 100, like the days of the week, the months of the year, the colors, the animals, like all of these things, right? But how many times have you said an animal in the last month? How many times have you mentioned an animal outside of a dog or a cat or something? Like you're probably not saying that much. How many? You're not saying every single number every single time. Like every now and then you might say numbers 1 to 10. Okay, that might make sense to learn 1 to 10, 1 to 20 maybe. But like, think about it. You're gonna spend a whole month learning all of this stuff. But then when it comes to speaking to somebody, like, oh, that person speaks Spanish, they don't speak English. Oh, let me say something. Oh, where you from? What's your name? What you do? Oh, what are you doing right now? Oh, do you need help with something? Let me ask this person. You can't say any of that because you spent the whole month learning the giraffe, the crocodile, or el cocodrillo. Like, these are, it's nice to know, but once you get to that level, then you can start like trying to learn different random words. But in the beginning, you need to learn your bread and butter. You need to know the stuff that you're going to be saying in a conversation tomorrow. Like, in 5 minutes from now, when you see a Spanish speaking person, you're not going to be saying, oh, el cocodrillo, oh, la manzana, the apple. Like, no. You need to use relevant stuff that you're going to speak to somebody on average, and relevant stuff that's relevant to you, that you and your interests say on a day-to-day basis. Okay? So again, spend your time wisely, because time spent learning and doing Spanish is not necessarily time well spent. The best the best way that you can spend your time when it comes to learning Spanish is learning relevant stuff to you and your interests, and just generic relevant stuff that you would probably say if you were speaking to a Spanish person, if you had to speak to a Spanish speaking person tomorrow. Number 10, the final reason why you're probably struggling to speak Spanish is because you are relying way too heavily on translation apps. Okay? Yes, I said it. Google Translate any other translation apps that you got out there. I don't care what they're called, I don't care where you got it from. You should not be relying on translation apps. Now, there are a number of reasons why you shouldn't be relying on translation apps. Yes, they can work here and there, they can translate things for you fairly well, kind of, but you don't want to be getting into that false sense of security and just becoming complacent and using these language apps. Now, I see it all the time here, every day in Colombia. People are using language apps, and it's not good. It's not good because there are a number of reasons why it's not good. First of all, context. All right, context with the language apps, it's just not good. So, for example, la llave or el grifo is the tap, right? Or un grifo, una llave is the tap, all right? But un toque is also a tap. But which tap are we talking about? Are we talking about the tap in the kitchen? Or are we talking about a tap on the shoulder? The translate apps wouldn't know. If you just typed in a tap, it wouldn't know the difference. It would just guess and just tell you one of them. But you're thinking, oh, okay, yeah, like a tap on the shoulder, un grifo en mi hombro. No, that's a literally like a tap on your shoulder. Like you've got like a tap that's like opening water and closing it, or or like yeah, like tú quieres agua, or está bien si es de la llave, or si es de la toque. If it's okay, if it's for del toque, if it's from the tap, but the water from the tap, like that doesn't make sense. Okay, so Google Translate wouldn't know to tell you this one or that one. All right, now the more you put into Google Translate, the worse it gets. However, you could write just one word and it will tell you the wrong translation because it doesn't have the context. So sometimes when you just write one word, it's terrible. And when you write a whole sentence, it's also terrible. So most people don't know how to use a translation app, okay? You would have to write the sentence out properly and then like hopefully Google would detect the context occasionally, yes, but a lot of the times it doesn't, all right? And another reason why Google Translate is bad is especially in Colombia, Latin America, but especially in Colombia. In Spain, they don't use usted that much, only for like an elderly person or like when you want to be super formal. But for the most part, they just say tú to refer to you. But in Colombia, you can say usted with your buddy. Like people use usted a lot. They also use tú a lot, but they use usted a lot. Both mean you. Tú means you, usted means you, but formally, when you want to address somebody formally. In Spain, but in Latin America, no, and definitely not in Colombia. It doesn't really matter. So here you would say, do you want to? Somebody would, a Spanish speaker from Colombia would say, ¿Quiere ir al cine? Do you want to go, or quiere ver una película? Like, do you want to watch a film? The Google Translate would translate that as he wants to watch he wants to watch a film, because usted quiere is the same as él or ella quiere. Usted quiere is you want, but formally. Tú quieres is informal, quieres. But él or ella quiere, he or she wants, is the same type of quiere. Querer is referring to want. So él, he, ella, she quiere. He or she wants. But usted quiere, you want. But however, here in Colombia, they don't always say usted at the start. So they would just say, quiere ver una película? They don't know you, so they're probably just going to call you usted. And then Google Translate would say, he wants to watch a film, and then you're going to respond, who? And it's going to say, quién? And then she's going to say, you. And it's like, wait, you? But you said he. Like, what are you, who is this guy? And it's just, I've seen that happen. It just goes like a massive merry-round. It's kind of like on Rush Hour, like, you, no, me, you. Yeah, so that's another reason why you don't want to use the translation apps, because it can just go really, really left, okay? It can go really left. And I've seen that happening. But yeah, if you're trying to learn Spanish, okay, which you obviously watching this video, you are, you shouldn't be using Google Translate. If you want to actually translate some stuff because you don't know it, you want to learn something new, you use Spanish Dictionary, which gives you a detailed breakdown of if it's said in Spain, if it's said in Latin America, or specifically if it's said in Paraguay. It will tell you the different context of it. It will tell you the verbs for that one, like trabajar, to work, and it will tell you el trabajo, the work, and it will tell you, the different, or the job. Okay, and it will give you the breakdowns, and it's very, very detailed, very, very accurate, and you can actually find the word that you're actually looking for, rather than just hoping and guessing that it's the word, but it's completely not. Okay, again, esposos, handcuffs, and esposos, like husbands. Okay, so again, you want to make sure you're not heavily, you don't even really need to be using translation apps at all, but definitely you don't want to be over dependent on them because it's not what you want to be doing. And also when it comes to, speaking with your let's say your wife or your husband who speaks Spanish, or their family that speaks Spanish, and you're trying to connect, or or your own family members, maybe you're from a Spanish speaking family but you don't speak Spanish, and you're using Google Translate, you're gonna get no ratings, bro. So, I'll be real, you get no ratings. Like you're using, it's just yeah, it's like, oh, I don't really care for learning. People are not gonna respect you. Probably not really gonna like you as much. They're not gonna warm to you as much because you're not trying. People warm to somebody who's trying to learn the language. Whether you're stumbling and it's like clumsy and it's not really working that well like you want it to, they're gonna have a lot of love and a lot of respect for you, and they're gonna appreciate your efforts, and they're gonna probably try harder to understand you. Whereas if you're using the Google Translate, again, you're not building any connections with Google Translate. You're not making any friends. If you're just using that with your partner for a year, 2 years, they're gonna start to think, does this person really care about me? They've not even tried to learn. They just use the translation apps like, this is weird, we can't have any jokes, I can't speak to them on the phone, because how are you going to use Google Translate on the phone when you're driving and you're both in the car? How are you going to use Google Translate to talk with each other when one person's driving? Like, it's just an absolute nightmare. Okay, so you should really be getting away from using translation apps. It's just the devil. Okay, you don't want to be using that. It's completely the opposite to what you want to be doing. You want to be the translator. Okay, and then you're going to get to the point where people using translation apps, and you see it and like, oh, necesitas ayuda, you need help, and it's like, oh, you speak Spanish or you speak English, and you start translating yourself, and that's really, really cool, and that's a very good goal to have. And yeah, I've done it several times, and it's pretty cool. It's a good feeling, and it's, you help people out as well in the process. So yeah, stop using translation apps. Any translation apps, stop using them. Put them in the bin. So in conclusion, if you're still here watching this video now, you probably made a lot of these mistakes. You're probably making these mistakes. That's perfectly fine. You're probably struggling to speak Spanish. You're struggling to learn Spanish. Again, it's perfectly fine. It's normal. All right. These are a lot of these mistakes, a lot of these things that I've displayed in this video are things that I was doing when I was trying to learn Spanish. Okay, it's what I figured out, and it's what enabled me and inspired me to make the FlowChat method and give it to you guys. Okay, and to give it to you. And a lot of these things, maybe you didn't really notice that you were doing them, that you were making these mistakes. Maybe you didn't even know that they existed. Okay, or maybe you've not even started to learn Spanish and you're about to, and now you know what not to do. Okay, so although we're not actually learning Spanish in this video, I've not told you how to say this and how to say this in Spanish. This actually should have, and probably has done, changed your perspective on how you see Spanish, how you go about learning Spanish, and how and your journey and your plan and what you're going to do. Okay, so yes, we're not teaching you Spanish in this video, however, it's pointing you in the right direction. All right, and it's a very good direction. Okay, so again, my name is Jordan. This is Yo Spanish. I'm a co-founder here at Yo Spanish alongside my brother Aaron. And if you like this video, make sure you like and subscribe and comment as well. And also make sure you check out the links below, and you can get yourself started here at Yo Spanish, whether you want to do the FlowChat method course, whether you want to do roleplay practice sessions every single Wednesday with one of our Yo Spanish coaches, whether you want to have one-to-one sessions with one of our Yo Spanish coaches, or whether you want to have one-to-one sessions with me. Whatever you choose to do, click the link down below and we'll get you started on your journey, and we'll get you conversational in Spanish. Vamos pues.